When you make God your CEO, he will 10x your business because business was God's idea. But he's not going to do it by changing your business. He's going to do it by changing you, by changing the leader. So all you and I have to do is understand how God leads you so that we can just replicate it. There are two things to understand about his leadership, and that is what we are going to be discussing in today's video. And the first thing about God's leadership is that God does not create cheerleaders, he creates allies. So what do I mean by that? Well, when God created us, what did he do? He gave us the option. He gave us the free will to choose his guidance, and we're going to talk about why that's so important. But not only that, after he gave us the option to choose his guidance, he also gave us the necessary skills, strengths, and talents to do so that we don't have to be cheerleaders just watching him on the sideline. We can be allies right there with him. But let's break down that first part. God does not force us to follow his guidance because great leaders never do. If you force somebody to follow you, you don't have a follower, you just have a robot, right? You can't force people to follow you or else they're not actually truly followers and you are not a leader. The greatest leaders never force their people to do anything. They give them the option. But here's the problem, and this is people's biggest trap that they put themselves in, especially me. I found that when I started my business, I was spending way too much time. I mean, I shouldn't be spending any time on it, but I was spending way too much time trying to convince people who didn't want my product, service, or leadership. I was trying to convince them to want it. When instead, I could have just poured all my energy into the people who did express interest and they wanted what I had to offer. But that's the thing. If you have nothing to offer, if you provide no real value, people cannot decide whether or not they want to follow you. Let's take God for example. And the biggest lesson we can take from this is that God gave us the greatest value of all. He gave us life, yet some people still hate him, right? Isn't that crazy? God gave us life, yet some people still hate him. The lesson to take from that is that you can't force anybody to want to follow you. You can give them the option, but you can't force them, and it's not your job to do that. If you have to convince somebody to follow you, they're not followers, they're just robots. Okay, but where do you go from that? Where should you start? Where you start is ask yourself, why should anybody follow you? Because if you can't answer that for yourself, how is somebody else supposed to answer that? If you can't answer why somebody should follow you, why should they spend their time answering that for themselves? Right? So that's the first part. You have to give them the ability to have the option. If you don't put yourself out there, they don't have the option. If you don't give them any kind of value, they cannot decipher whether or not they want to follow that value. But then there's that second part. Instead of just giving them the option, you also have to equip them with the strengths and talents and skills, right? And the best example I can give you from this is from Exodus 18. From Exodus 18, we see that Moses and his father-in-law, they're having a discussion because his father-in-law was just visiting him, and the first thing he notices is that Moses was working very, very hard, but his people around him, he was the only one working. They were just sitting and watching him work from morning till evening. That's what it tells us. So Moses' father-in-law says, what are you really trying to accomplish here? Because if you're trying to accomplish anything great, you're not going to do it on your own. If you want to go far, take a team with you. So he asked him, what are you really trying to accomplish here? Why are you doing all this while everybody just sits around you and just watches? And Moses responds to him, well, this is my job. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to handle all the disputes and give them God's instructions. And his father-in-law says, that may be true, but you are going to burn yourself out. This is too much pressure for one singular person to handle on his own. So why don't you just appoint among each of these groups a strong and capable leader, give them the necessary training to handle the common disputes, and let them bring the major ones to you. And this is exactly what Moses does, and it tells us that everybody else was better for it. Everybody was better for it because it is not your job as a leader to do everybody else's job, right? It is, in fact, it's actually the opposite. It is your job to put people in the right places in the right times to be capable for themselves, to be free, capable individuals. That is your job. And where does God play a role in that? Well, in 1 Peter 4, it tells us that he gave every single one of us big or small gifts. He gave us gifts, spiritual gifts. And what I mean by big or small is that it literally says if you're good at speaking, then speak. If you're good at helping others, then go out and help other people, right? Because when everybody is working together and using their individual gifts and you help them identify their gifts, your business, your life, everything is just going to be running 10 times more efficient. That's how it works. A hand is useless without an arm. You need to help each person identify what they are good at and help them do it well. It's one body with a million different parts, right? So that is your job. But we're actually going to keep going with 1 Peter 4, but with the second thing to understand about God's leadership. The second thing to understand about God's leadership is that his leadership is about authority, but he doesn't use his authority for superiority. He uses it for servitude. And let's keep going with that 1 Peter 4. Let's just keep understanding that. Because God gives each of us gifts because we're part of the same body with different body parts. But there's a reason why, and it says it is to serve one another well. That's what it says. Because business life is all about push and pull. It's about give and take. That is the expectation. It's not about take, or give. It's about give and take. And for me, what that looks like, we actually just had an emergency meeting at our firm, and we all were just talking about how can we push up our leader so that they can pull us up with them. It's not the expectation that we give so that we can take, but it is the expectation, hey, we are going to push you up because you have created us to be individuals freely choosing your leadership. That we wouldn't have these capabilities without you, so we're going to push you up so that you can pull us up with you. That's what it's about. If your business is working like that, everybody's serving each other. You can't ask for a better business, but let's look at an even better example. When Jesus, the one thing God did when he was here with us, when Jesus was walking the earth with us, is he did not look down on anybody. In fact, he looked at the janitor the same way he looked at the CEO. Everybody was worthy of the same respect. But this is what happens. Everybody knows the story of Jesus washing his disciples' feet, right? If you don't, that's what he did. He served his disciples. He was the leader, but he was the one serving his disciples. Okay, that's what he did. But what I find most intriguing and the most interesting part of that story is actually the first part of that passage. It's before he starts to wash their feet. In John 13, it says, I'm just going to read it for you. Jesus knew that the Father had given him authority over everything, and that he had come from God and would return to God. So he got up from the table, took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and poured water into a basin, and then he decided to start washing his disciples' feet. So right there, look at that first part. It was cause and effect. Because he has authority, he serves. That's the opposite of what the world teaches us. The world teaches us because you're at the top, you have no more reason to serve. Jesus said the opposite. Because you are at the top, because I have the authority, that is why I serve. It's a cause and effect. It was a decisive action. It wasn't some passive things like, well, I guess I'll serve, right? And you may not realize it, but being a business owner, you are assuming a position of authority, and that means your job is to serve your people well, and then after you serve them, learn how to serve them even better. That's how you grow your business, and that's just how you grow your life. And if everybody is serving everybody, then everybody goes up together. But be careful, because I did say it's the expectation that our leader is going to pull us up with them. That's what I said about our firm. It is the expectation if you equip your people well, but we don't give so that we can take. We give so that our people can become individuals and choose our leadership, and the expectation is that they give back to us, but that's not why we give. I hope that's making sense. There's a difference. We don't give so that we can take. We give to be good people and to be good leaders and to equip our free, capable followers. But the reason we serve is not so that they serve us. It's the cause and effect, but it's not the reason we do it. Okay, Jesus did not wash his disciples' feet so that they would wash his. It was only the cause and effect. He realized he had authority, and so he served. Okay, but he even tells them, you don't understand what I'm doing now, but you will eventually. And That's what he was doing. I serve so that you could go out and serve other people as well. And before I start rambling on about a million different things, I'm just going to leave it at that. This is how God leads you. He creates allies, not cheerleaders. And then, not only that, he uses his authority for servitude, not superiority.